the MC, and the IC. The stairway to heaven is on earth. What do I mean by that? Well, heaven can be seen as something that you aspire to, something we also have been taught that is outside of ourselves. But what if we look at it in a way that is an ascension to get to the highest part of yourself? The IC and the MC is about your destiny's soul. And we're going to be talking about the soul in a lot of detail. Across time, humankind have cleverly worked out the systems of the soul. Some say you have 4 souls, some say you have 10, some say you have 3. And why these things have taken place in the first place. So fully understand what the IC is in your chart. So if we look at it from, let's look at it from the fundamentals of astrology. The MC and the IC are the vertical spine of the astrological chart. So they exist here and here. So what's happening here? Alongside this area, you have the 10th house, which we have here. In where the IC is, which sits below the horizon, right, which is the AC and the DC, which is the ascendant and the descendant. The IC is associated with the 4th house. And we'll be looking at the IC quite heavily because the understanding is the IC is telling you your ground roots, how you are made up, a bit of a Freud 101 situation, okay? How the psyche of your mind and how your ancestral lineage has been lined up, right? It could even show you your upbringing, which is very, very, very insightful. So the IC talks about where you have been. So when we talk about roots and soul and ancestry and all this kind of stuff, this is where it gets juicy. And a lot of the times we think of the 4th house, we understand that the 4th house is about family, roots, you know, your home. And it's ruled by Cancer. So it's giving that flavor when it comes to the IC. So if you are ever hazy about the IC, just think of the 4th house, think of Cancerian, the Cancerian archetype, and there you will find some elements of where you need to go when it comes to your IC and where your IC is in your chart. So I wanted to look more into, I did some extensive research about how humankind across time has broken down what the soul is, right? I think it's fair to say everybody knows about the mind, body, and spirit, right? This is the general understanding, but there are many cultures that have gone deeper and broken it down and had different roots and all kinds of things. And we're going to get to that area where we talk about astrology and how that is included into this blueprint of the soul. And so where your IC is, I think it's fair to say we talk about all the factions, the vertical and the horizontal, because they all kind of not tell the same story, but they all look in a, they're not stars, or they're not, they're more like mathematical points. So when you look at it, when you look at your ascendant, for example, your ascendant is how you rise up. And this is governed by the 1st house, is how you are seen. And then with your descendant, this will generally, some astrology say, hey, look, this is how you find out, who your husband is, because the 7th house rules marriage, relationships, connectivity. Is more of a serious element to define a partner, as opposed to, let's say, your 5th house, which is more about the carnal, more fun pleasures of intimacy. And so the 7th house is associated with the DC. So oftentimes they say, hey, look, if you see your DC, that's where your husband, or, this is the kind of thing. I don't look at it entirely in that way. I do take it because I'm like, if it's there, I can see where you're going. But obviously it's a bit more, there's a bit more to look at when it comes to that. And we're gonna get to there when we talk about astrology and how we're understanding astrology, not just from, I guess, a mathematical or from a fundamental point of view, but also from the intuitive, more spiritual side as well. Because ultimately what's happening here is that's what astrology was, right? Astrology wasn't just one part. It was like part 1 of 3. And so this is why I always say in my videos, like, astrology is not a religion. It's not something like, oh my gosh, you have to have this way. There are parts that need to hold all the systems together to make the whole. And so with IC, it looks at where you have been, how you think, how you feel, the kind of things that you think about when no one's around. It's the other you. And how the IC heavily connects with the 7th house, or rather the 8th house, to be fair, because it's looking at the darker sides, or when I say darker sides, it kind of sounds like, but it's more like the parts of yourself that you don't show others, or maybe you don't show others until a very long time, or your close family and friends probably know that side of you. And then you have another mask where you go outside in the world, and this is another representation of yourself. So the IC is very integral in like ripping apart what is happening with you in the realist, your core part of yourself. And so this could even be daydreams. This could be your family stories, or like things that you just imagine. Like, why am I thinking about this? Why? This is the IC. And so the MC is, interestingly enough, it makes the MC it's not isolated. The IC will determine your MC, or how you treat your IC will determine your MC. And I say that because with the IC, because it's associated with family, and I do say it's a Freud 101 situation, because your family environment is what makes your core understanding of what is love, what is care, what is all these different factions. And that's going to put you down 2 paths. It's either going to put you on the path of, I was going to say path of righteousness. It's either going to put you on a path of enlightenment, and seeing that the people there's the idea that you chose your family to realize yourself, and also to get to your MC. And how you get there. And I'll give an example. Let's say, right, you are, I don't know, you're as a child, you wasn't taught how to cook. And this made you indifferent. But then when you went out to the world and you're paying your own bills, you don't know how to cook. And so you become resentful because you don't know how to cook. Now, that's just one route from your IC, right? Or if in that position where you're an adult and you do not know how to cook, you could say, okay, well, I didn't know how to cook, but what can I do to change this, right? This is alchemy. This is turning lemon to lemonade. You say, okay, right, I'm going to get some cookbooks. I'm going to see what's online, and I'm going to teach myself. I've eaten food across time. I know what food tastes like. I'm going to teach myself. Those are 2 roads. Now, when I say 2 roads in terms of upbringing, you could either be resentful of your upbringing, or you could use what you have learned, or even the tools that you've been given to surpass any limitations that your upbringing gave you. And sometimes the restrictions or the resentment that can be held based on themes that act around your IC in whatever house it is in, will hinder you to get to the highest point of your MC. Now, your MC is like I said earlier, is governed or represents under the 10th house. And the 10th house is about career, your reputation. even fame at times, right? How you're seen in terms of the area of work, how you're identified, very different from the AC, about like just more of like your aura, right? This is more about your tangible efforts. This is very Saturnian. It's like, what do you do? How are you seen? And so with the MC being here, this is how you see yourself, and heavily so. Again, with the Freud 101, you would be able to assess what that looks like based on your upbringing. But it's not a be all and end all, because there's two forks. You could go, two roads that you could go down. You could go down to the road of resentment and just not, like the cooking example, not ever cook anything because you're still, holding that because your parent didn't do that for you. Or you could go down the road of saying, actually, no, this is my life. I'm gonna make sure that I achieve everything that I need to do. I've got the resources, I've got the things. Let me get going, because I'm not letting anyone hinder me to get to where I need to be. And where you need to be is your MC. And so that could be MC in a benefic way, right? It's beneficial for you, it kind of works for you. Or it could be in a malefic way. It's not really working for you. It's a bit ill, And that's where you start to say, okay, well, let me have a look and see what I'm doing here, and see if there's anything from my childhood or, upbringing or my immediate surroundings that is making me not go to move forward to my soul's destiny. I do talk a lot about the soul's urge, and I do attain it to other areas of your chart, Saturn, Jupiter, etc. But the MC and the IC is more about your internal compass and how you go. And so this is where this kind of mind, body, and soul, this kind of idea of this trilogy that as humans we have been taught to understand, there are these systems in place. And I wanted to give an example astrologically about how it could work in terms of the houses that it sits in. So I decided to have Aries as the MC and Libra as the IC. Now, why I chose these in particular, I'll get there with a little story time. But for now, let's have a look at where we can understand these two opposites, because it will always be opposite. Your IC will always have its opposite, much like with most of the chart. With anything, it's about balance. Everything is about balance, and my story time will definitely explain that as well. So if you have Aries and MC, it's suggesting that you are someone who is a leader, someone that is supposed to go through life and use most of the things that you've understood in your IC and other areas of life to propel yourself and to break away, not entirely, but just to, I guess, merge the two together, to understand that you don't have to be part of anything to excel or move forward. And in fact, it is anything but that. The Aries MC is saying you have the capabilities of being a leader. So if you wanted to go in self-employment, if you wanted to go and do something that has a lot of energy, because Aries, as we know, is very Martian. It's very kind of like go, right? It can't do anything soft. So, high intensity. If your job is just kind of like, what is the word that they use? Oh, it's a fast-paced work environment, something like that. That's going to be Aries MC. That's going to be your bag, and let's say if you are into sports or you're doing something that is active or physically challenging you, this is going to be your playground. And so, picking a career or picking, because MC rules the 10th house, rules that kind of career element, would work for you, right? And in terms of the Destiny's Soul, this is more of a healing, and we'll get to this understanding of these icy ancestral element, because this part gets a bit juicy, you know, because this is the hidden. It's not just, okay, well, I secretly like to collect stamps for a hobby. It's like, there is something ancestral, whether it's your dreams or whether it's however it's showing up in your chart, right? So I see in Libra, right, for example, is going to be merging with family. And even in some ways, you could either not be even, you know, sometimes people have favorites, like that's the favorite child, or, you know, whatever. Like when it comes to Libra and the IC, Libra IC, there is this idea that there is no hierarchy. There is no like, you are that one. And that is the challenge, right? That's the challenge where you say, but you actually are, because your MC's in Aries, you are the leader. So things like self-employment, like you are that. But in the earlier stages, there is this kind of like merging, like, I don't know why I'm seeing like different Play-Dohs being mushed together. Like there is no divides, there's just one. And so this strive for the merging to the point of like everything has to be equal. So maybe that's what you was experiencing, that there was no kind of like hierarchy or favoritism, but almost, or they may not have been, and then you are in a position where you are desiring for that balance in your home life. So there is these different areas. Now, oftentimes with MCIC in Aries Libra is that your ascendant will probably be in Gemini, Cancer, or Leo. And so that's going to add an extra element to how you show up in the world. Yeah, so along with this kind of MC fire sign, you've also got this rising that is either going to be like Aries, that's going to be very intellectual, witty. You know, you want to just get things done, you want to get about, you want to socialize, but it's not aggressively so, but more like it's you're going to be well known for that. Or it's going to be Cancerian, so there is this kind of like wanting to have that balance between this icy home life and this Aries wanting to charge through and go and do your own thing. And you know, that could be challenging, but at the same time, there's a reason for that. There's a reason why that rising is for you, along with all the other elements in your chart. So have a look at your chart, see where your MC and IC is, and yeah, like it's definitely a good space to understand where you're at. So I feel like, because it's about, IC is pretty much about the psyche, right? It's all the spiritual bits, that the daydreamy parts, you know. It's Neptunian in its sense. It is ruled by Cancer in a way, if we're going to associate with the fourth house. So even looking at your fourth house in your IC, or your 10th house in your MC, is going to add that extra element, because your MC is not always in your 10th house and your IC is not always in your fourth. So just to be clear, and the same with your ascendant or your descendant. So the stairway to heaven is on earth. Now, I feel like the story that I wanted to bring forth today is something much like, I do a lot of reading on history, on mythology, art history, and it really is telling the same story over and over again. And there was this show that had a character who was almost like, it's like rags to riches in a way, right? This young kid, he wanted to just help out his mother. His mother wasn't well, and he wanted to find a way to make sure she's better. Now, in this world, it was not like our world, but the storyline was very, very closely linked to that of the Greek mythology, or even the pantheon of like just the rulers that be, these people in the sky, right? And no one's saying anything different when it comes to this. There's a war in heaven, and things go a bit pear-shaped, and the story's no different. And I think across time, when you do watch films, movies, whatever, you will start to see a repetition of archetypes. And maybe that's a strong indicator of how the world, in a way, is using that kind of Mercurian energy to communicate with us about this story that keeps playing itself over and over again. What's he trying to tell us? Like, what's happening there? So, in this story, you had a god, one god, right? The first god, and he had all the power in the world, right? He created everything, and he was a bit bored. And much like most of these stories, or folklore, or mythology, these deities always are bored. So, due to the boredom, he had light and he had darkness, right? And he said, okay, what can I do? How can I alchemize this energy? Because I'm just here by myself. I need entertainment. And so he created lightness and darkness to be. The lightness was the rulers and the darkness was the monarchs, right? Now, what happened was that he decided that because they were a higher level or just a little bit lower than him, he said, I need to distract them, because if they realize, if I just have these two people to, beat each other up, they're going to realize that this is just my entertainment. So I need a mediator. I need something that would allow for me to watch and not be part of the mess that I've created. And so he created Earth. And in this story, the idea was those that were of the light, the rulers, were to protect the humans that were living on Earth. So then we became a creation, or human beings in this world became the creation. And hopefully by now you're starting to see that there's some in the beginning God made. any story that you're connected to, right? Wherever you're from, is starting to sound very familiar. And so with the darkness, the monarchs were the ones that had to fight and destroy the humans. So now they've got something to do. And now the main god, who we'll call the ultimate being, is now entertained. Yes, we've got the light and the dark, and they're beating up the humans. Yes, this is so fun. Ooh, who's gonna win? And so with that, they started to say, wait, hold on a minute. They got to that point, the point that the ultimate being was very afraid of. Well, not afraid of, but, he put a little caveat to say, I know that they're going to do this. I know that they're going to realize that this means nothing. Because what was happening was that the rulers and the monarchs were not winning. It was almost like they were both had equal amounts of energy. And so this game just kept on going. And so the ruler said, wait, hold on a minute. Let's go back to the ultimate being. Let's go back to the one God and ask him for more power so we can just get this game over and done with. And so they go to the ultimate being, and the ultimate being says, new phone, who this? Blocks their all communication, right? So they are left by themselves. So they're like, what? So now they realize this is truly a game. At first, they was just speculating, but they said, no. This guy's really got us out here. He don't care about us. They don't care about none of us. So possibly the idea could be is to go to the monarchs and say, hey, guys, the ultimate being does not care about us. There is actually no reason for why we're protecting the humans and why you're defeated. There's no reason. There's no reason for none of this. But because they're programmed, right? Because there's a binary code, and we're going to talk about that later, right? Into their systems, that's the order of what they're controlled to do. they still kept on doing it, right? And then they decided, no, let's get together, right? We're gonna get the ultimate being, yeah, because this is not okay. We've got all this power and we're doing it for nothing, for entertainment. So there were 7 of them. So there were 7 light beings and 7 dark beings. So the light beings were like, yeah, we need to do something. But the 7th one was like, sorry, I don't like this plan because I think you lot are gonna fail in this plan, right? You're talking about the ultimate being. You're not gonna win. So he's like, do your thing. I'm gonna go over to the monarch side. He's like, but you can't go over to the monarch side. You're programmed to be a light being. He said, look, do what you need to do, but I'm not. Now, the ultimate being already had in mind that this would happen. So he made one of the light beings programmed to, should a scenario like this happen, to still stay in line and do the right thing, which is to keep playing this game. And so what happened, the 6 light beings were saying, okay, let's go. Let's get this guy. Okay, because who does he think he is? This is a game? So one thing led to another. They defeated the ultimate being and the ultimate being died. Definitely giving Greek mythology of, let's say, Kronos defeating Uranus, perhaps. And so at that point, they were like, okay, so we now that we've defeated him, we have all the inventory of Earth, we have all the rules, we have all the destinies, we have everything. So now we're going to try and make things better. Now, remember, there's only 6 of them when there should be 7. So all of this story, this narrative is about balance. So because there was an imbalance, there was almost, when it came to that 7th one that rebelled, he had to destroy one of the monarchs or the dark being to be part of the monarchs, right? So there's always like this idea of balance. And because there was a time where there wasn't balance, there was a lot of chaos on Earth, right? And things were leaking out and all kinds of stuff. So they started to realize that now the monarchs were like, well, we're still programmed to kill the humans. So I don't know what you guys are doing, but we're going to keep going. And so each and every time they kept on reversing time, right? They kept on say every time the monarchs were killing humankind, they kept on reversing time to make sure that humankind doesn't die. And what had happened now is that when they got to a point, they were just like, this is not working. So the 7th guy, he then came back to the light beings, and we're going to name the 7th guy Ashford, right? Who stayed informed. He didn't believe that the 6 light beings could actually make it. And so Ashford goes to the remaining 6 light beings and he says, hey guys, I see that you've done it. I doubted you, but you did it. But there's still no solution because the monarchs are still killing the humans and we're still trying to revive them over and over again. And we're just like in an endless cycle because you've killed the ultimate being, right? So now we're in a loop. So they're like, okay, so what can we do? They're like, well, I think if we choose a human that can just have a bit of my energy, right? Because I not only have the light being, because he's also destroyed a monarch, he has the hybrid of light and dark. So this person, Ashford, was like, yeah, I think I'm going to give someone my energy. I've got all this energy. I need to give it to someone, but I need to give it to the right person. And so they were like, okay, I mean, it's a different idea, but yeah, I think if I do that, then we can actually once and for all defeat the monarchs and we don't have to keep going in this loop over and over again. And the story goes on, and they start to, because there was so much imbalance, they became portals in the world, in the earth. And these portals, humankind started to realize that if they defeated some of these entities in these portals, they could get points and gold and jewelry and all this kind of stuff, right? And So during that time, they said, look, we've got these portals on this earth. We can find somebody that is brave enough to, if they can defeat these entities, if they can go through our trials and tribulations, they may be the chosen one, or they may be the right person that can end this whole thing. But they need to be of good spirit, because again, I'm giving them this power and they may abuse it. So I need to make sure it's the right person. So I have to put them through these trials. And I say this story to say, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, this is an anime called Solo Leveling. And I thought it was such a perfect example for IC, because what happens, there is the kid that they choose is called Yang Sung-woo, I believe. And he is a lowly guy. Like, he's not important to anybody. He just wants to look out for it. He wants to make sure his mum is okay. And they choose him. And I believe it's episode 1 that they go into the dungeons of dungeons. And it's almost like that's the trial where he goes through this like near-death experience that he then gets chosen. And why I say this, because the way he navigates, and have a look at the show. It's a good show. It's like the IC. He becomes something that he never explored before. He was really timid. He was very much your IC in Libra, wanting to just merge. But there's a point when in your IC that you have an opportunity to grow into something, or grow into your MC. And you can grow in a benefic way, or you can grow in a malefic way. And so how this person was motivated, who was motivated through, or activated through his mother not being well and saying, look, I've got to do something. And so I said, maybe his MC is an Aries, because as the episodes go down, like, you don't even recognize him anymore. And I think in life, maybe we miss the MC and IC, but sometimes you become so fully enabled, balanced in your MC and IC, that you don't become recognizable anymore. You become somebody different. And across time, nobody really understood. Even the entities were like, who are you? We don't know who you are in the system. This is not, who are you? And he's like, oh, I just see this interface in my mind that tells me that I've got these abilities. I don't know. I just want to look after my mom. So even though with all this power, he still has that 4th house IC of wanting to just, I'm going to make sure my mum's okay. So I use this example because it literally is, I feel, is IC energy. It's saying, and then even more so when it talks about, so what this kid does, he goes and defeats enemies. But the enemies, because he's got the skills and abilities from Ashford, who is now both light and dark. He's absorbed those energies, which I guess the darkness would have been Hades, if we're going to think of it in the Greek sense, that he's got the abilities of necromancy, right? So he goes and defeats these enemies, but these enemies now become his army, right? And the army becomes, they get transformed to do good. And so now where he goes, and this is where, I can't wait to get to the part of like soul dissection across humankind, right? In real life. Because when it came to this kid, he was now using his IC to propel his MC. So he never forgot where he came from. He never forgot, he championed it. His calmness, yes, he was a bit more confident. He was walking a bit, a bit more confident. He was talking differently, but he was still him. And this is where that duality of the MC and IC meet. And have a look at it, because episode 1, it talks about the because you're thinking, how do you get there? How do you get to your MC? Much like the cooking example, you have to get rid of the ego, because the ego tells you, you need to look down on your parents to define who you are, because they didn't teach you how to cook. So yeah, always blame the parents. So you can feel like the big person, and sometimes the ego can limit you to go forward. And in fact, you say, no, I can't let that be my story. And much like where we have in episode 1 of the show, I think it's amazing. It should definitely be a movie, in my opinion. The voice actor, wow. I was like, I had like goosebumps. The way he spoke. But, have a look. You let me know. And so they had 3 commandments in this trial that they had. There was 17 of them, only 7 survived, right? So we've still got this play on the number 7. And so what we have here, they said the commandments were to bow before God, to praise God, and to prove your faith. And what was so fascinating about the whole thing, I don't feel like I'm giving spoilers. I think I gave a really in-depth backstory. And so the idea of it is death of ego. So bowing before God, right? Some people don't believe in God, but they're saying you need to do so. You need to believe that there is something outside of your knowledge, right? Right now they were in this dungeon, something outside of your knowledge that you have no understanding or capability of understanding. Just bow, because that's going to rid your ego in a physical sense. So you're physically bowing. Much like the IC, there are some things, much like with the cooking analogy, there are some things that you must get rid of, right? Your ego is a very amazing aspect of who you are. It's kind of like you're given ascendant vibes, right? But sometimes it can be a detriment, and it's being able to differentiate the two. And so with this idea of the rules were to bow before God, a lot of them, there were 17 of them in this chamber of this dungeon, and a lot of them didn't make it. They're like, I'm not bowing down to no God. Okay, you go. You don't get to make it to the next level. Then the second part was to praise God. Now, this is more of a psychological part, right? This is, again, I see in its entirety, because you are praising somebody. So to bow down, you can pretend to bow down and say, okay, well, in order to save my life, I'm going to bow down. Okay. But on a psychological level, can you praise something that you genuinely don't believe in? And so therefore, it was like, okay, well, my life is at risk right now. Let me do this thing. This is like the breaking of the ego. So this is almost like humankind. How we shift, unfortunately, is we have to go through intense experiences in order to move to another place. Much like what we had with COVID-19 or the pandemic, there was a lot of changes that probably would have never happened if that didn't happen. Not to say it's a good thing, but like humankind, for us to shift, something intense has to happen, unfortunately. And so with this, I liked the idea that they were tapping into different areas of the psyche, physically, psychologically, and also to prove your faith, right? So how you action all of that together. And so in order to prove their faith, it got a bit more, I guess, controversial. I would say watch the show. If you have, let me know what your renditions are. If you haven't, I promise you won't be disappointed. It is a good, even if you just watch the first episode, it's a good episode. And now you can look at your MC and IC and see where, I guess in a more animated sense, how it fits, right? And how it fits if you understand the mythologies or even your own mythologies from your countries, where that fits as well. Because in that chamber, you also have Ashford, who he was seen as death at the time, or Hades. And then you had the ultimate being, which was more just a shell of the ultimate being because he was already destroyed. And then we had all these other, I guess, godlike beings that were assisting this whole test, really. And yeah, and it's just to say, like, life is a test. It will test you. It will challenge you. Hey, let's put you in this family. See how you chose this. Like there are some cultures that say you chose to be in that family to get to where you're going, but you will forget when you get here. So how are you going to remember? and you remember through experiences, you remember through all different types of things. But it's just saying, okay, all right, cool. All right, I'm gonna get that cookbook. Yeah, I'm gonna get Jamie Oliver or whoever. And I'm gonna make the best cuisines, because I'm not letting what happened here not propel me too. Because it's almost like a trick. Can you pass the test? You are actually, maybe you're supposed to be a chef. Maybe you were supposed to be a chef, and because that scenario of maybe ideally if you had someone who was also a chef that was to help you learn how to cook, then that would be a better family to go into, right? But no, life doesn't work like that. It puts you in these very intense scenarios at times, or different parts of your life, to challenge you. And sometimes we don't like the challenge. And this is where we have the MC and IC. Which path do you want to take to get to your MC? So the stairway to heaven is on earth, because you are essentially ascending, whether you want to call it Jacob's ladder or whatever, like you're ascending, or the different levels of your chakras, you're ascending to get to that point of enlightenment, to the point of your soul urge, your destiny. What is that? What is this destiny? So we're gonna talk more about that, right? So sometimes your destiny can be where people are trying to push you, trying to get you out of this maybe in a funk, or someone says, hey, look, you're really good at singing, you should really try this, and you hear it multiple times. You're like, okay, maybe I can do a thing or two, and maybe that's all you need. It's not always kept to your fourth house. The world is going to help you with your destiny. The world is going to help you, and that's why you have to integrate and communicate. And this is the beauty of people, us as vessels, being able to be used to help each other on our destinies. And so let's have a look. I did put some like Plato, Aristotle teachings. I'm going to get here in a minute. Actually, let me just get there now. So the idea was that across time, there's different soul systems, or different ideas of each individual having different compartments of the soul. Some have more systems than others. Now, when I got to researching about the systems, or the Greek systems, because this is more westernized, right? Most people understand this, and then I went backwards. And then I said, well, why do they just have like this small system? And then it starts to go to this point where it's like, much like with a lot of things that the ancient Greek kind of moved into, was to create a more control, right? So if it's, hey, look, we're going to have a new religion. Hey, we're going to put in the New Testament. Hey, we're going to create a logos, and we're going to name him Jesus. We're going to do different things, right? To kind of create an order for humans to follow. And these guys are very intelligent. I said, there's no way, because I said, but it doesn't make sense, because I already understand that these philosophers don't follow the rules, that they don't practice what they preach. When they say, okay, well, you need to bury your people in this region, but they bury their people outside in their backyard. Yeah, maybe they have a bit more money, but they have shrines for their ancestors, but they say, hey, look, you need to believe in this religion, and you need to pray in this way, and ancestors are demonic, so when we have these factions, and you say, well, and this is it, the Plato says these teachings are for the sake of the city, not necessarily for like spiritual ethical like understanding, but more for like, hey, I think you guys need more control, and things are getting out of hand. So we're gonna steer you in a way that is a bit more simple. Okay, we're gonna say you have 3 parts of your soul. We're not gonna say you have 7. We're not gonna do all of that. We're just gonna say you have this. Keep it simple. You put in some religion. Gonna make you. And then the beautiful thing about humankind, when we talk about the soul, when we talk about our ancestors, we have alchemized it ourselves. We've mixed it up. There are religions and cultures across time that have merged Western ideology along with their one, and you call them different names, and you probably thinking about what they are right now, right? There's so many different ways in which it has been done across time to still hold cultural importance to ancestors. Is it Dias de Muerte, the Day of the Dead? I mean, that there is profound. They still probably even have like Catholic understanding, because that Western indoctrination has been put in, but they blended things in. But that culture has been going on for years. So imagine the impact and strength when we think about, I guess, metaphysics or quantum mechanics, whatever you want to do. Like, imagine the potency of that, because of how long it's been held. Despite everything that's happened, they've still kept that culture alive. And so when it comes to this, we're not looking at like, oh yeah, this religion is, or this mindset is bad. They genuinely felt that if they were going down this road, it would help their agenda, which is to have more control over the population. Is it good or bad? Hey, that's not the point. The point is that there is an understanding about souls, and there are different areas. So we're going to explore that. And I wanted to first talk about the Greek area, because this kind of lends an eye to how even across time, maybe we look at our grandparents, or we look at our just elders in general, and how they've managed to alchemize one with the other. That some people, even if they are, let's say, Christian, they're going to respect, they might have a shrine in their home, because there's something intuitive about your IC, about your ancestral lineage, your root lineage, that can't be contained in a box. It can't. It just cannot move. So even the idea of it is like they've tried to contain it as much as possible, but it's just going to leak out, because the IC, the fourth house, is Cancerian, it's water. You can't contain water. You know, it's going to leak out, especially of this magnitude, of this depth and its importance. So let's go more, right? Let me see what else notes I have here. Okay. Aristotle, in private letters, contradicts his public teachings, explaining his dreams of spirits and daemons and inherited fates and ancestors, right? So with daemons, which is very interesting, there was a book I read many years ago, and it was called The Subtle Knife, I think it was called. And each character was, they had a daemon, and the daemon was a representation of their spirit self. So even when I saw this in the Greek understanding of souls, and so with the Indo-European, before the Greeks changed it and then they changed it again, the Indo-European understanding was that you had about, I believe for them, they had about seven souls in you, right? And they have different purposes. And so the fact that Aristotle was understanding this idea of daemons, or still held it, which daemons then start to alchemize into demons, which was then alchemized into something bad, then it starts to get a bit more like, okay, so we need to start scraping things back. Now, it's not me saying, okay, demons are good, but it's just more seeing like this was seen as an essence of part of who we are, and a depiction of that, right? So, what else did I write? Okay, yeah, so also them having the belief that guardian spirits, there's the fate threads and star souls. So yeah, they believed in all this kind of stuff. And, you know, across time, even when we think about astrology, and now I think mainstream has made it very cold in a way. And this is not judgmental, this is more of an observation. Like they've taken out the element of creativity, imagination, let's say. And the ones before us have almost always, when it comes to astrologers, they were connected to the in-between, the things that we don't fully understand, the astral realm. This was all connected. It wasn't just like, oh yeah, all of that kind of stuff. That's just, Pluto, that's just 8th house, that's just 12th house, whatever, right? It wasn't just that. It wasn't just kind of like a throwaway concept. It was deep. And so there's that. Let's go. Now, why soul systems differ? And this is more like when you think about your IC, thinking about it in a way that allows for you to ultimately really get an in-depth dive for where your IC is and what it shows and what it's telling you, how you can expand this area of your lineage or your root soul, or what your soul is craving for. Because this is the it's like, how I can see it, right? Because we're going to talk about binary and all this kind of stuff, right? I see it like a USB stick, and you come into this world with a set of conditions in your USB stick, and this can look like different souls, different factions, different, all kinds of things. And you are essentially finding ways in learning how to open maybe the zip files in your USB stick, because right now you can't open them, or you don't know that they're even there at times. And much with, I guess, the Western understanding is that for the sake of order and control, a lot of these things have been abandoned. But now we're getting to a point where we're really searching for, like, what is all this? Much like the story that I was saying, like the archons and the rulers were like, hey, wait, are we just, it's just for someone's entertainment. Wait, hold on. And now there's depth for us as humankind. There's things that we're supposed to be doing. There is a reason for our being. So let's have a look, because what I started to see that there were similarities. So where we have the first soul system that I wanted to look at was Chinese cosmology. So they have 10 souls, right? The seven souls, we can group them because they come under Po, and they are the yin souls. Now, what's interesting about these yin souls, these are the souls that are accrued over time. So these determine your emotions, even your appetite, your survival instinct, and your body, right? And when you die, this dies with you. This doesn't come over to your next life or whatever, right? So there's an understanding that there are more aspects to the soul. And I think the Chinese one is very extensive, I have to say. And I like the idea with emotions, because you can carry emotions or create or absorb or adopt, should I say, emotions that you never had to begin with, but now you've made that your ascendant, that you made it you, that and also it would impact your MC, right? So this theory of these yin souls that belong to the earth is temporary. Then this idea of the 3 souls comes back into play. So now this is your ethereal soul. This is the astral realm. This is all the, Neptunian elements here. And they call this Hun. And this is the dreams, the astral intuition. This is where when you die, this is the first part that goes. So it goes back to the astral realm, or whatever lineage that you are, whether you're part of the fire lineage, water lineage, whatever, right? You go back. And I found that so fascinating. And what was also fascinating was that the Chinese cosmology and the African Afa or Ifa, they are very similar. I've been doing some research when it comes to linguistics between the Tamil and the Igbo. The linguistics, they have crossovers, which makes me, the more I'm reading about it, and I can't remember the lady's name, but like she did all the research, and she was just like, yeah, we all come from the Igbo tribe. And I was like, whoa, I need to read more. But anyway, and I do notice that even some things that I read, like from South Africa, that they're very connected to the words and linguistics of Japan. And I'm like, how is this happening? So even reading about, anyway. So now we've got Afa or Ifa. Now, just for reference, SE means soul. So, so this is soul of consciousness. This is a soul of a specific ancestor, and this is the soul of your entire lineage. And this is where the IC gets juicy, right? Because it talks about your roots, right? This is where you would say this is your root lineage. And when I think of that, it feels like a digital container of sorts, right? It's kind of like saying your root lineage, just find this random paper, your root lineage could have a container of, I don't know, ancestor A, B, C, right? And who knows what this might even be a container of lineage for your, from a lineage from somewhere else, not somewhere else, but not in your direct line, right? But across time, who's going to take this container? But this is fixed throughout. This doesn't change. This is where it gets interesting when it comes to your IC. Like, you're not just by yourself. I think even biblically it says, do you not know that you don't exist by yourself? You're not alone. It's not, you have to have a container that is going to allow the Holy Spirit. And this is the part where I found it so fascinating that all the religions are alluding to the same thing. They've got their own little characters and different archetypes, but the core of it, same thing. So something to expand upon when it comes to your IC. And so they believe that you would have the three souls, much like in Chinese cosmology, you'll have your three main souls. However, they don't go into this idea of these seven souls, which I think is very, I think is exceptional because it makes sense. And if you've been on my, if you've been with me for a while, you will know that this should make sense to you. Right. So what they believed was that your fourth soul is activated while you're on Earth. And this fourth soul, how it can be activated, because I was like, how? The people who want to know how this is done. And how it is done, they have this thing called Odu. Now, Odu is, if I can make an equivalent, is like, I can't even make, like, similar to like an astrology chart, right? It has frameworks and systems that will determine what you're supposed to do on this earth. But it's not exactly like astrology, but I'm just trying to kind of squeeze the idea in as much as possible that it's a framework, right? And so the Odu, they've worked out that there's 256 life paths. And so with, when you have one bite, in each bite, you have 256. And this is where it gets very interesting when we're talking about technology and the matrix, that there are some similarities in terms of how we, and this is an ancient system, right? So it would, this idea of the matrix or these kind of like binary codes of zeros and ones are in this Odu concept, right? And so these foundational stories, so let's explain how it works. So in order for them to understand their destiny or their soul path, they would have to go to what is called a Bokonos or a Babalawo, right? Now, these guys are your, I guess, equivalent or maybe more potent version of your psychics, your mediums, all this kind of stuff, right? Because what they have to do, not only do they have to have the ability to tap into the astral, they also have to learn the destiny libraries, the Odu of these 256 life paths, because they've collected this over time and now they understand how this works. So how do they do it? again, much like the more diluted version, let's say your psychic who has their tarot cards, they will throw some cowrie shells, you know, those shells that look like this. Hopefully I'm doing it grace. They will have some cowrie shells or some cola nut beads or cola nuts, and they will throw it on the ground, and whatever formation it makes, they will match that with the 256 life paths. So whatever path that was, that matches it to, let's say, I don't know, it looks like the pattern of the number 74 of Ogbe Iyeku. Then they say, okay, that's your framework, but it doesn't mean that that's them, right? It's not that. It's not like, I guess, not like astrology, where it's like, okay, that's you. From there, they tap in again. And when I say tap in, it's more like they go into the spiritual self, or they go into a trance-like state to understand more about that person's destiny. And once they works that out, they say, okay, so you've got the life path 74, and on top of that, these are the protections you need to do. These are the taboos that you need to be aware of. These are the kind of people that you need to stay away from. This is the health advice that you need to have in terms of your well-being, etc., etc., etc. So it's a whole network, right? It's not just this isolated, oh, right, you just got this path, there you go. And if we look across time, whether it's Western, whether it's Eastern, like, no one is saying anything different about this idea of spirituality. And unfortunately, and I have to say unfortunately, because unfortunately we are in a time where this idea of spirituality has been so sensationalized, right? That now it's just seemed like woo-woo. You don't take it seriously, right? And I think that's the unfortunate part. And I would even say it's fair to say that when we think about the idea of the ancestry part, or when we're talking about the IC, that there is in this day and age there is a division in terms of astrology and spirituality. It's like there's two things, and then they're one and the same. And I say the same because what I feel I've noticed when it comes to spirituality is that there is a lot of predictions that is mirroring. It's kind of like a chat GPT. Like, it just mirrors back information that you already know, which would be fair to say that there is just now a hijacking of data or information that not necessarily is there to help you. Much unlike where we've got these solstice systems here, they're here to say, okay, this is what you should avoid. This is what you're supposed to be doing next. This is, hey, take this rhinestone or take this amulet or whatever it is for your protection, because etc., etc., etc. And so there's a more in-depth understanding, whereas now it's just, I think it's definitely understanding your IC, and even when you are getting readings, to understand if the differentiation of what your soul is saying, okay, what your root ancestors are saying, okay, because whether you are going to assign to the Indo-European understanding, the Chinese cosmology, or the African cosmology, no one is saying anything different about ancestors. And so this idea of knowing what these guides are, and I even like the fact that they do, Indo-Europeans, before this kind of shift, this ancient shift for just changing it into like three souls or three elements of self, is that they were spirit animals, right? Or called their fetch spirits. And there were shamans, right? Which would be, your shaman will be your equivalent to your Bokonos or your Babalawo. So, fascinating stuff. And so now we're living in today's age where in the day of data, a lot of our information can be regurgitated back to us and can be given under the guise of spirituality. And that's something I would even say when it comes to your IC. Look at where it is in your chart. Look at what indicators are assigning you to what is actually happening, because it's a foundation to where you need to go. So now if you go to anybody, right, you know in yourself what makes sense and what doesn't. And this is what I wanted to talk about when we understand displacement. And what could be taken advantage of. And it's not to say, oh my gosh, that person's this the bad astrologer, or this is the bad spiritualist. No. We look at it different, right? Much like when we understand the IC and the MC and understand our path, as opposed to who's blocking our path, and seeing it not more than just a challenge, right? So I say that to say, because the more I was reading about the African or the Afa or Ifa cosmology, it brought me to the understanding of those of the diaspora, right? Those who have been so far away from the African spirituality, or even Indo-European spirituality, that there's this huge displacement, right? Many people across the world have either migrated to other countries, other areas, and maybe got rid of their family name and wanting to just merge and migrate and just kind of be part of society, right? And just say, I'm ridding myself of the past. This is our new home now. We're going to make a life. We're going to improve our lives. We're going to make this work for us. There's a lot of work here. We can see a lot of potential here. We're going to be here. Now, that's more kind of like one aspect of displacement of your original home. But then there is this idea where, like, when we think about things about like slave trade, or things that are a bit more intense or involuntary, let's say, both can be involuntary, like you don't have no choice. But this is like you really got taken to a whole different place by force. But yeah. What happens there when it comes to lineage? You can't necessarily go to the idea of your Bokonos, or you can't go to a Babalawo or whatever, because generally you want to know that person you can trust. As we know now, it's not everybody that you can share your information to and it be met with respect. And so with saying that, how does that work then if you don't have the exact lineage of your ancestors? How does your IC work in terms of root? Are we just going to say, oh, look, it's fourth house. Oh, look, it's just the root areas of your life and the secrets you don't tell anybody? Or can we go deeper? And so where things get interesting, this is where Mercury comes in, right? This is where it gets fun, because across time, I was watching this video about this guy who is reconnecting with his Haitian roots. And I found it so fascinating because he said something and I was like, that makes sense. He said that his mother was like a very devout Christian, and when he told her, I'm looking into voodoo, she was like, why would you want to research the devil? Why would you want to do that? And, the more he started to explore this side, he was just like, it's not actually bad. When we really scrape it back, there's a lot of like colonial deposits that have kind of forced us to think the way that we're thinking. And one thing he said the Haitian religion, what they do before they start their prayer, they will ask for Papa Legba to lead the way. And then with all the merging of deities, or everyone kind of renaming these essences, we find that Papa Legba is in fact the element of Mercury, right? And if we look in the astrology chart, we know Mercury doesn't waste time. It gets about, it's talking, it's communicating to everybody, it's getting the work done. And so I found that synergy so fascinating, because ultimately, there is no restrictions in terms of, even if you are displaced and you've gone to a whole different part of the world, that there is still ways in which you can understand your destiny. And this is more like my bit, right? This is more like you meet people, places, and things that help you towards your destiny. And you also, I would imagine, go within and understand your IC and understand your upbringing and your environment to further understand what it is that you're supposed to be doing. Because a lot of the time, your initial drive and your initial wonders and your destiny or your soul urge happens when you're at your youngest stage, when you're not as influenced by the world, right? And you're slowly getting there. You're slowly getting the high influence of all kinds of things. And so when I was researching more about those people that have been displaced or have moved away or rid themselves of certain identities and names, lineages rather, it would suggest that the lineage of your ancestor doesn't change. Even if you change it on a physical sense, on a spiritual sense, it doesn't change. And so the idea is not necessarily to go to a Bakanos or a Babalawo or a shaman. It would be to understand that there is something more important about that path. Very interesting, right? So I wrote, some destinies are not meant to be discovered through paperwork and tradition, but are meant to be gained through direct revelation, which makes it even more interesting because the Babalawo was the bridge, right? It was the person that, I guess, connected with this Papa Legba, right? And then the person that would receive it would not necessarily have that direct connection with Papa Legba, but like, or the equivalent of that. I think Gabadoo, yeah. They wouldn't have that exact connection, but now these ones that have been displaced have a different, unique connection, it would seem. And so it would be gained through like a direct revelation through this kind of Mercurian energy or Neptunian energy. So, you know, when you hear stories of like the diaspora going through things or displacement or missing birth times or, oh no, there's a flood, all the birth certificates are gone, missing lineages or things like this, or, you know, oh no, the whole birth, the birth room, I don't know, like the admin area has been burned. Like there's a fire, like it's all gone. And then you're like, that's so interesting. And so a lot of this stuff is like, it's not hopelessness. It's seeing the illusions of, I would say, Mercury or Anansi or the trickster that is both here to assist and also here to challenge. And that can be really, really confusing because you're like, why? And this is it, right? This is understanding how to ascend, right? This is the heaven on earth that I alluded to earlier. And so I found that very, very fascinating. Now, also, so we've spoken about Chinese cosmology, African cosmology, and Indo-European cosmology, and their shift from the Slavic, Nordic, and Balts, and then there's a conquest of the empire and Christianity, and that goes into the ancient. I call it the ancient Greek shit. The ancient Greek shift. Sorry, I thought my battery was going again. Let me just charge. Right, so now where we are at. So let me just going to briefly go over here. So before the shift, we had the Indo-Europeans had the psyche, which was the personal soul. Very, very similar to the Ori or the Salido. And you would have here the ethereal souls. This would be part of it here as well in the Han, in the Chinese cosmology. So then you have the ancestral line, right? Which is, they say, is the heroic lineage. This is where there was this idea of like, if you die a hero, if you die for your country, you die doing something heroic, you then acquire, that ancestor is able to attach themselves to whoever to kind of put that courageousness throughout your lifetime when you're going through life. Again, I just see it as a USB stick of knowledge and information. And I guess it's just kind of downloading it and opening the zip file. And then we have the daemon, right, which I was speaking about earlier. This is what they will see as your destiny. So this would be, I would say this would be the equivalent of your fourth spirit. This would be the idea that how it manifests, right? So it could turn it into the daemon is an animal spirit. It looks like, so whatever it looks like is whatever you are, right? So if it looks like a mouse, then you have the ability and agility of a mouse. If you have a crow, then it has the ability and the agility and abilities of a crow, and all the things that come with it. And so much like when you're interacting with different people, with different daemons, if one is a crow and one is a mouse, then you can see which one is going to have more, not superiority, but like, there's going to be an understanding. And I like that idea, because it's kind of like sometimes where there was this idea I was seeing online when it was coming about, there are people that, when we talk about the idea of jealousy, and I talk about this a lot because it stems in so many areas of our lives. When somebody is jealous of you, but in the way that they can see that they could help you, or they have resources to help you, but they do not, because they fear that you will surpass them. This is a different level of jealousy and a whole different game. But when we think of in the root, root, we can look at it from a sense of maybe there is something greater about you that their ancestral lineage can perceive, but it's manifesting in that person as a sense of jealousy. But it's almost like, this is where it gets very intricate, and this is where it gets really interesting to understand more about your ancestral lineage, and I think this is where I love astrology for that, because it's giving you a sneak peek. It's not giving you everything, because that would be boring. You need to kind of go through life and work it out, So then they had Fortuna, right, which would be the equivalent to, in African spirituality, I think it's Gabadu or Mawu. I think it's Gabadu. And she's the person that does fate. Oh no, or Mama Tiche. Yeah, sorry. Mama Tiche, or Tiche in Greek mythology as well. So Fortuna is the one that says, okay, sorry, I'm blindfolded. I don't know what I'm going to give you. You're going to have good luck, or you're going to have some bad luck. Like, I'm just the girl that spins the wheel. You know what I mean? So that then gets changed to, or gets truncated into just the psyche, your passions, and your intellect. There is no spirituality. There is none of this kind of stuff. And what was so fascinating when I was looking at this kind of stuff, the idea of like the word, don't ask me why, Seginel, right? It's a French word, right? And I don't know how I got here, but the root word of this is to have an attachment of like an essence, how do I say, an entity that is genius, right? So you inherit the genius of that entity, and it's to be able to create something that you would have not, no human would normally, it's unhuman-like to create or understand that. So they say, oh, c'est génial. And it's just, c'est génial is like, oh, that's great, that's amazing, right? But the word génial also comes from the word, or genie, is a genie. And a genie grants you wishes, right? It's very interesting, even in linguistics, and I think that is probably the closest like unveiling of what our history is all about. But yeah, this idea of gaining information or gaining intellect, and I say that because it's talking about, that's so interesting, because nu means we, right? Or us. You're not just by yourself, you know? And so let's go to the last segment, which is going to tie everything all together. When we're talking about the AC, you'll never see the IC in the same way ever again. And what we have here is the Hindu Jyotish, which is Hindu astrology or Vedic astrology. Now, a lot of times, many people are like, oh, you know, what system do you use? What house system? And again, we must try our best not to use divisive rhetoric, right? It's understanding the history, understanding that there is no right and wrong house system. They might be a trend. There might be a trend, but some are more trendy than others these days. Like, for example, how I learned astrology is through the Vedic house system, or the whole sign system, and with a hint of Vedic understanding as well. So, you work it to what feels comfortable for you. And I say that to say, hopefully by now, when you look at all the systems and you look at that, it's not as simplistic as just looking at one area or looking at a chart from a different perspective and seeing that, or even looking at several house systems to get an understanding. It's still external. You're still looking outside of yourself to try and find understanding about what's going on within. And in actual fact, whether it's a shaman, whether it's a babalawo, whether it's bokanos, whether it's a psychic, whatever it is, or medium, there's that part that comes connected with your astrology chart. So I say that to say, doesn't matter which one you choose, right? Like, dissolve that area or that ego part to say that's not what it's all about. It's about your destiny. It's about where you need to go. And it's not to validate anything that doesn't push you to your destiny. And there's a lot of mirroring also. Again, this kind of ChatGPT mirroring of feeding the ego. Like, yeah, I know that I'm really good. Like, no, it's about where your destiny is going. So, Vedic astrology has a similar thing in terms of using astrology, and also because these guys don't use astrology in that sense, right? Using astrology and using spirituality, right? So you would have a priest, which would be a yotishi, right? And they would be trained, much like in the bokanos, will be trained to understand the frameworks of astrology and its meanings and also its lineage initiates, right? So they do learn about these things, right? Your IC is very heavily based on your lineage. And I'm going to tell the story. It's a real life story, ladies and gentlemen, but I left it at the end. And this is seen as a blueprint, right? Much like with the Odu's 256 life paths. It looks at the 12 houses, it looks at the 9 planets, and there's 27 nakshatras. Now, and these are the lunar mansions, right? And then Vimshottari Dasha is the life wellness system. Am I saying that right? Sorry, not the life timeline system. And what we have here is they are looking for karmic indicators. They're looking at what you owe in your past life and also your purpose. And this could be a series of things that they tell you to break down, much like with the African cosmology. They're looking at it from a way of, okay, so here's some gems, here's some jewelry for protection, here's some rituals that you need to do based on what we've found in your chart and based on what we've tapped into spiritually. These are this is your destiny map. This is your yantra, your mantra, your ritual, your protection, right? These are all the things that you need to go on your journey. Now, there was someone he was from Bangladesh, and he was explaining to me about, because he had like this ring on his finger, right? So he's Hindu. He had a ring on his finger, and he said, this is what I was given when I was initiated. And he said, this ring will be my protection because he left Bangladesh to come to the UK. So he was like, this is the ring that I have for my protection. This was given to me. And he said, based on my chart, it's suggesting that I will meet different people across my lifetime to understand myself more, blah, 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 blah. But there will always be one person that I'm with that will go journey with me through everything. And I said, oh, that's so fascinating. And he's like, yeah, what we do. And I can't remember the exact name, but they say what we do, like, for example, when you get married or there's a birth, let's say you get married, right? And you want to get married to somebody. They have to look at both of your charts, and they have to look at it from a physical point of view, and they have to look at it from a spiritual point of view. And they said it was one time where there was a lady who, she wanted to get married to this guy, but the guy, the Jyotishi, was like, you're married already. So that would clash with the current, the contract that you want to have, the spiritual contract that you want to have. It will clash. So you would need to work out your previous contract with your previous marriage, because that person still believes that he's married to you. And this is where it gets deeper, when it's like, okay, well, that person still thinks they're alive, right? This is kind of like there's many people in the spiritual world, or who or in spirituality, understand that there's some people that get lost in the spirit world, right? Or get lost, or they don't know that they've passed away. And they said, so this is what we're going to do. And so they tap in and they say, okay, we can see that your partner or your past person is in a tree. And I feel that this, when he was explaining, because she wasn't previously married, I feel like it was more of like one of her root ancestors or something like that, where she was still connected to. So they said they're in this tree, you have to chop down that tree so you can release the spirit, so that you can now, that contract can be, you can have a fresh contract and marry this person. And this is very deep, right? So this idea of covenants and contracts, this is something that happens in real life, where we have to sign to something, or tick the box, as we do now in the new age, to confirm that you agree to the terms and conditions. These contracts are expensive. They go to so many different areas of our life, even on a soul spiritual level. So what happened with this lady now, she was now able to move forward and marry this person. So I like the understanding of this, because it's like, it tells you, it goes past what we understand in Western understanding what this whole astrology thing is all about. And I feel that ties in well, because I do use astrology to help you guys understand where your destiny or where your soul path goes. And it's looking at older systems, but also respecting the older systems to help understand where else you can go with that, with your own chart. And so have a look at your MC and IC, see what is happening there for you, and see what is happening when it comes to your IC in terms of childhood, and how you've grown into that as an adult, and how you are realizing your MC. Are people seeing you in this way? When people see you as your MC, are they seeing it like in a positive way or in a negative? And so I say that to say we have reached the end, and I wish you the best on exploring your MC and IC. That's all for now. Take care.